Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Conversations We Need to Have. I know you guys see some familiar faces. We have Mr. Joe Knopf. We have Pastor Larry. He's having some technical difficulties, but we're going to pray that that we can navigate through them. We have Dr. Chris Willis Reese, the newlywed, and we have Miss Jennifer. How are you? How's everybody doing?
Doing well. Thank you for having us tonight.
Good.
Of course. And we're just going to listen. I don't have a script. I don't have an outline of anything. We're going to start off with something light. How about that? We're going to start off with something light, something that we all can agree on, which is the presidential election.
It is happening. Yes, I think that's where our agreement ends.
I got to get my church fan out.
Oh my.
Oh wow.
But how's everybody doing? How's everybody doing as far as just life in general? I know, Jennifer, I know you've been dealing with some things, so we are happy that you are on, because this is like a family. People don't know it, but we be arguing and fussing literally all day and all week behind the scenes. So yeah. I'm just excited that everybody's on, and we have Miss Gloria.
Hey,
y'all! I made it.
We're all here.
Glad you're here.
We have the crew here, so we're just excited. But Joe, how's it been going?
Oh, good, man.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Thank you for asking.
You in South Carolina?
Yep. Actually, Sally is coming through as we speak.
Oh wow. Wow.
I mean, it's not that bad. It just had a downpour a few minutes ago at the beginning of the hour, top of the hour, but I'm good now. It's just real overcast.
Be careful. I think Pastor Larry's frozen. Miss Gloria, how's it going?
Oh, it's going really well. I had to rush home from work.
Oh, well, thank you.
Pastor Larry is having too many technical difficulties. He can't hear anything. I will say, Pastor Larry, if you're still listening, when I went out and back in, it muted all the sound, and I had to find the tap sound button by tapping my screen.
Oh.
It made me feel very over 40.
And I think Pastor Larry's just frozen altogether.
He just messaged.
Oh, okay. So we'll see.
How's everyone else?
Dr. Reed, how's it going?
I'm doing extremely well. It's almost pull them out season where we're going to be removing people from political positions. So I'm extremely excited and geared up and ready. And I have my libertarian friends on my side, and it's time to take some action. So I'm really excited.
And that's a good segue. As you guys know, and we'll talk about this more in detail, but I was actually tested positive for COVID-19.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah, and it was an ordeal. So we're definitely going to be talking about that because I want to bring awareness just based on my personal experience about the issue. But I want to start off talking, and if you guys have a topic that you want to bring up, by all means, there are no restrictions on what we're talking about. I really wanted Pastor Larry on because I really wanted his perspective on this particular topic, the presidential election. So my first question is not who you want to be our next president, but who do you think will win this presidential election and why? We'll start with Joe.
I honestly, I think Trump's going to win, and I don't say that because I come from the right, because I'm a libertarian. I don't want him to win. But I think, honestly, I think the game's rigged. And I also think he does still have a ton of support out there. But I also think the game's rigged in his favor. I think they, put up Joe Biden as like a fall guy kind of thing. just like a head fake to the left. But I was listening to an interview with Bill O'Reilly, and he said if Joe Biden does a decent job against Trump in the debates, he has a good chance to win. But if he falls flat on his face, as he very well may, then Trump's probably going to win. So it may very well come down to debate performance, but I kind of think it's still I think it's going to go Trump's way.
Okay, Jennifer, not who you want to win, but who do you think realistically would be in the White House in the next year?
If who I wanted to win were going to win, we'd have a President Warren in November. But I know, whatever. Should I have to be everybody's favorite? I just like her. But I honestly have such a skewed version because I live in such a red area that it's hard to kind of guess. But what I think is going to happen is the people who held their nose and voted for Trump last time that never became true believers are voting for Jo Jorgensen, from what I understand. And I think that she's going to pull a heavy amount of swing voters to her, and it's going to cause Biden to win because I don't see the left going for her. But I see the right going for her. So a lot of my Christian friends who can't stomach Biden are headed libertarian this time. It's what I did in 2016. I mean, I voted libertarian in 2016 because I got in the booth and couldn't vote for Hillary. So I plan to vote for Joe Biden. I plan to vote for a sentient rock. I don't care. I just want a functioning adult.
Yeah, okay. Miss Gloria.
Wow. All right. So this is what I think about this presidential election. I think it's time for us all to stop thinking about politics and start thinking about survival. Because if we don't think about our individual Democrat, our whole democracy, what's going on, then we're not going to survive. So in all honesty, I'm not going to even... when you asked that question, my heart started to pound, and I am very anxious about the outcome of this election. But the one thing that I'm really focused on right now is survival. And I think that that's what we all need to be doing. We need to be thinking about our survival. If you don't think about the individual survival, your individual survival, then you need to think about the survival of the democracy. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay. Dr. Reese?
With so much civil unrest, I agree with Ms. Gloria that at this point, it's more important for me for us to get back to what we would call civility, and that we would put ourselves in a social space where we can be respected in other nations as well as locally. Now, that doesn't say that there won't be division, but at this point, the division has spread so wide that I'm actually afraid of the outcome. So it is my hopes, and I hate to say it this way, but if there is a force that is willing to cheat Trump into the White House, then I'm hoping whatever games are pulled, that those games are evenly pulled on the other side, and that we're victorious in another sense of direction. I'm being realistic about that because I know things are set up to put him in place, but I'm hoping that those backfire as all of the other decisions he's made recently. And I'm hoping that that will lead us to another person. Whereas I don't really wish that we would have a third party person disturb the numbers. I definitely agree with my sister Jennifer that those numbers are going to lead us in favor of Biden.
And as far as my position, I'm honestly on the fence. And I agree with everybody actually, but I mainly agree with Miss Gloria about survival. And that agreement intensifies at the thought of having 4 more years of who we have now. And I hate to bring the race card in this early, but I don't know if Black people can survive 4 more years of a president like this.
I don't know if white people can either.
Well, yeah, that's true. But it is amazing, and honestly, if I'm going with my gut, I will say, and I'm mentally preparing for this so that I do not be shocked, that I'm not shocked the way that I was 4 years ago when I woke up and saw Trump and his family standing on a stage saying that they were our new first family. So I'm mentally preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, because to have 4 more years of this kind of narcissistic behavior, and with him not having a reason to even reel in or become polished because he know he's not going to run for re-election again. Imagine the stuff that this man will do to our country. So honestly, I don't care if they dug up Marilyn Monroe in President Kennedy and had them have a man child, and that man child was voting, running for president. I would vote for that man child over any day over Trump.
He'd be so handsome.
John F. Kennedy Jr. is still alive.
Well, either both John F.
Kidding.
Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. He was with both of them, but
Right.
That's neither here nor there. So my question is now, what do you think? And we have to point out the fact that President Trump lost the popular vote. I think people forget that. He lost the popular vote by like 3 million votes.
That doesn't matter.
Well, it matters now because they've adjusted the Electoral College to reflect and to become consistent with the popular vote. So, which means that if the Electoral College that is set up now, which I think they should completely abolish, completely, and just go with the popular vote, but they've adjusted it now. So no matter what, if the popular vote has more votes, then that's the way that the Electoral College have to go. So hopefully we'll have the same issue, and it will be a different scenario altogether.
To be honest with you, if I could be extremely petty, even if the Electoral College votes did not carry as much weight, or the popular vote didn't carry as much weight as we would like, to be extremely petty just because it matters to him with the numbers, I think it's extremely important to state explicitly that he lost the popular vote. It drives him insane, and I think it's hilarious.
But everybody tries to make that a wedge issue, and it's not. It's a non-starter.
Meaning
it doesn't matter who wins or loses the popular vote. The Electoral College is what matters.
It doesn't. No, what I'm saying, Joe, is now is very important. Now, if you were talking about last
year, now you have a few states going, ending their faithless elector issues, but most states had done that anyway. So,
but I mean, at the end of the day, there are always symbolic things that cultures use to mention something that's happening in their culture. For instance, the Queen doesn't ride a horse in front of the army anymore, especially the Queen of England doesn't. She drives the Porsche or something like that. But at the end of the day, she's still the queen of those nations. And so I think just because we have a system that does not work, by the way, it's being modified in a way. It works for certain people, but clearly it has not worked for everybody. Because if you flip through a book of presidents, there you go. Because if you look through a book of presidents, they all look the same, except the one we keep talking about that he can't stand the most. I'm just saying.
God.
Well, there's an actual quote about that. Who said that?
Go ahead, Jennifer. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say there's an actual president or candidate on record, and I think Trump may have even said it, where they were just having a conversation that was on the record, and it was like, oh, well, we need the Electoral College. If we don't have it, Republicans will never win.
I'm just waiting on someone to tell me, and I've gone through multiple. I have, and I'm not bragging, but I've gone through school for quite some, not as much as Dr. Reese yet, but I'm almost there. But I've obtained a few degrees, and I'm just waiting for somebody to tell me how the Electoral College works. I need
how it functions.
How it functions,
maybe not just how it functions, but why certain things are the way they are. I think it's important to go back in and understand how the Southern strategy came about and why, what was put into place, and how that affects low-income people of color, people in places like the Rust Belt that are largely industrialized, and also just districting. I mean, there's so many things problematic.
I taught history just like Joe. And it's not a part of our curriculum to go that deep into the Electoral College. And even if you try to explore beyond that, you find that there are delegates in states. So I tried to make sense of the list of delegates. I wanted to say that they all had some type of political tie or some type of community-based election, but they were all rich. They all owned businesses. They all had influence. So now, again, it doesn't make sense to me. So is it a rigged system or not would be the question.
And theoretically, they don't have to give their votes to the person that they're supposed to. I mean, it's similar to how the DNC happened and AOC gave hers to Bernie. I mean, that could theoretically happen. I don't know that they'd let it stand, but theoretically they could.
And I guess I want to unpack Joe's disagreement with the system not working, because it's very rare. You're going to find a low percentage of even the most patriotic Americans who are not asked for an overhaul of not only our judicial and justice system, but our election system as well. So I want to get Joe's perspective on why he thinks our election system works so well.
Well, to say that the Electoral College is somehow rigged for Republicans is just utter nonsense, because number one, the Electoral College was instituted before political parties even existed in this country, and the Republicans didn't show up on the scene until like the 1850s. And that's number one. Number two, how it actually functions is I don't know how like simple I need to go, but you know, the people of each individual state, they vote for president. Well, then they vote for who they want for president. Then that state has a number of electors who are proportional to the population of that state. And then they, like South Carolina, has 8 electors. And then they vote for the president. And their votes are what matters. And the reason why that's important is because it balances out large population centers with more rural states and communities. Which is very important. Which is very important because it gives, because I mean, let's say the Black community, let's say a lot. I mean, how many of them? I don't know what exactly the population density of Black, but I know there have been in the past a lot of Black folks who lived in rural communities and rural states, and that balances out.
One thing to consider is it may have balanced out 50 years ago when we were agrarian more and when industry existed in more rural areas. But now that a lot of it's gone overseas, a lot of people are now in these city centers. What's happened is white flight occurred. And so you've got these rich, influential people leaving the city centers, or few will stay so that they can maintain some kind of, you know, whatever it is. But the thing is, when they did that, it shifted it to where now it really truly does benefit Republicans more than it benefits Democrats, because a lot of the Democrats are in the bigger cities.
And that doesn't go to say that we're trying to say that it's rigged toward Republicanism. We're just saying that it could be rigged toward influence. And then you made a valid point yourself in saying that it's a representative few. Well, if it's a representative few who are delegates and they represent the people by confirming the vote for a president, then why is it such a secret who those delegates are beyond their casting of the election? And how representative are they of the people in which they're voting for? Because if you look at the list for Georgia,
how do they become delegates?
You look at the list for Georgia, and I'm a Black man, I didn't have much representation in the delegates who were electorates for the Electoral College in the previous election.
Well, I'm a libertarian, and I didn't have any representation either. I think,
but all the ones that were Republicans still look like you.
And
I mean, that's what he's getting at. He's not talking about that.
I can't say that I would agree with. I can't say that I would agree with Jennifer about it being rigged towards Republican. I will agree with Dr. Reese. It is. I think it is rigged towards influence, money. Those who have, you know, if we want to get become a conspiracy theorist for a moment, those who have sold their souls, to say the least. But I think it is rigged towards influence, not necessarily a particular party. Because some will argue that it was rigged in President Obama's favor. Some will argue that whoever wins You know, we
Exactly.
can.
It's not rigged.
Well,
If
Oh no,
voting is
it's definitely rigged.
it still does
the
cause a
electoral
literal
college is not
imbalance.
rigged toward one side or the other. It's
Maybe
just
not one side, but certain voters count more.
No, it's
So a voter
not
in
for one.
Wyoming shouldn't count as more than a voter in like New York, just because New
Yes,
York.
yes, they should, because it balances out low population states versus high population states that have, let's say, California and New York, that have very large cities within them.
I
It does.
understand what you're saying. I just don't agree with it.
And what I would
Why
say,
not?
what
Because
I
you're
would say
wrong.
is
No,
a
it's not
number.
wrong because why? It's not wrong because
Joe, you're still missing the point. If
okay.
the electoral college was abolished, numbers would simply become numbers. 53 million is 53 million, no matter how you slice it. It can be 20 million from California.
It would encourage places that are, maybe experiencing some voter suppression to maybe not suppress the voters so that their votes will actually count.
We're also missing a key factor here, which thanks Abraham Lincoln, but we're missing a key factor, and that is that the reason the electoral college is designed the way it is because we are the United States. We are not one country. If we were one country, let's say in England or France, then the popular vote would be fine. Then would probably be fine, and then we could talk about a problem with the electoral college if it were that case. But we're not.
But I'm going to take a Joe stance on this and throw it right back at you. You said we're not one country. We're the United States. We're one country, boo-boo. Sorry, I hate to break it to you. I read the Constitution. That's how it looks to me.
Yeah, you sound like President Trump at the moment, Joe. I must admit.
Yeah, it's a little, I'm going to need to take it down about 20% there, Squirrely Dan.
No, because that's the problem with what we are now. That's the problem. We're far too centralized in our power, and that's.
Well, Joe, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean when you say we're not one country? Break that down for us.
Well, it's kind of in the name, the United States. That means each individual state was its own country, and the reason we formed
colony. Go ahead.
No, they were its own country, its own separate country. It's called a state for a reason.
You know the Southwest, right?
What?
I'm being a jerk. Ignore it.
So South Carolina, there were commonalities in culture, but South Carolina was its own separate country aside from Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, eventually when we kicked the North Carolinians out, and Virginia. We were all separate countries that we came together.
Virginia was a commonwealth.
Well, it was a confederation of states. It was not a confederation of countries.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time because
what do you think a state is? What do you think the definition of state is? It's like English
on a national level, it carries a
France
very different definition than it does in a local conversation.
In a historical
mind
country,
you, no other nation uses the term the way we use it.
Right. And we don't have the Articles of Confederation for a very important reason. I mean, that's not how it's run anymore.
Yeah, I know. The Articles of Confederation was a beautiful document, and it's what we should have kept. But whatever. But
I live in Georgia. I don't want it to be in charge of me. I want somebody watching its back.
So we're going to transition for a second because I want to touch on something.
Chris, can I get some of that wine?
I want no idea what you mean.
White girl wasted with
I'm Gatorade.
I'm happy that you guys are laughing at this heavy topic that I just, and just didn't see the heavy topic that I just put up here.
Oh God!
But I want to just spend a few moments talking about this because I did a show a couple of weeks ago, and I just think this topic is very interesting. Chris, you and I and Pastor Larry, we went at it pretty strongly about this topic. And so I want to hear from the carrier of wisdom and the vehicle of peace, Miss Gloria. Just give us your overall view when you see this word.
I see someone else, especially a man, trying to tell me what to do with my body. And I think that I think that people who don't have a uterus should not be making decisions about what women do with their uteruses.
Nobody's telling you what to do with your uterus.
Yeah,
Well, except for the ICE people who are
when you
taking
make
them out
laws
without
about
permission.
abortion and say that people can't get an abortion, a woman can't get an abortion, or try to say that a woman can't get an abortion, you're trying to tell me what to do with my body, and my uterus is a part of my body, and
yeah, your uterus is, absolutely.
And so I think, and anything that might be in my uterus is a part of my body. So I think that it's really one of those things that.
Well, I have 3 questions, if you don't mind indulging me, Miss Gloria. And yes or no questions. That's you can one word answers. It'll be fine. Do you have children?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where are they?
They live. Some of them live in Georgia, and some of them don't.
And where is your body right now?
My body is right here.
Bro, that argument is terrible. Let me go ahead.
No, it's not.
That's ridiculous because they are still a part of me. You're right.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
They only have half your DNA, so it can't be you. It does matter. This is science. Remember, this is science.
It doesn't matter.
How is it not? How does it not matter?
It doesn't matter.
How?
I wanna.
They were in my body.
Joe,
first
that
of all,
argument is hold on 1 second, because I have to address this now. That argument, Joe, is terrible.
No, it's
that's
not.
Very bad.
Oh, please enlighten me how that's how that's bad.
So how once they are here and alive, does it matter what happens inside my body? Tell me how that's connected to the issue we're talking about.
Right.
Well, also, Miss Gloria, that would mean whatever previous ejaculations that he left out in the open somewhere, he should have held on to those as well.
He should have.
Now that's a ridiculous argument because sperm and eggs only have half the chromosomes. Stop saying no. It's yes. They only have half the chromosomes that a normal human body has. They have 23 chromosomes, or was it?
Once they meet. And they meet inside my uterus. It's my uterus. It belongs to me, right? Once I buy something and bring it in my house, it belongs to me, right? So it doesn't matter who manufactured it. It doesn't matter who painted it. Once it comes into my house, it belongs to me.
Well, that's a completely different acquisition process.
Let me.
Go ahead, Jennifer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I really want to speak on it for a second too, because I'm in a unique position that I believe the statistic is 1 in 4 women have experienced the loss of a pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very personal and different experience. So let me explain to you. I believe I may have talked about this for a second on the last show, but I found out I was pregnant. I was 4 weeks pregnant. A week after that, I experienced some bleeding, went to the ER and was told, I'm sorry, it's not a viable pregnancy. Your body's going to eliminate this. If it doesn't, when you come back in 2 weeks for your follow-up, we'll do a D&C, which is a dilation and cleansing, where they clean out the inside of your uterus to prevent infection. So nothing happened for 2 weeks. I sat and grieved the loss of the idea of a child. What I did not grieve was an actual child. When I saw blood, I did not think, oh, there's my baby. I thought, well, I grieved like, oh, we won't be having a baby right now. I did not think that is my baby. And I think that's an important distinction for a lot of women, because I am pro-life. I do not personally want to have an abortion. I would not take birth control pills for the last 4 years that I was able to conceive at all, because I felt that they could possibly cause an accidental miscarriage. So what I'm saying is, I understood it was an idea of a life, but even in that moment, I did not feel anything die. I felt a loss of an expectation. Now, it may be different when you're 6 months along or whatever. The upside to this story is I went back to the 2-week checkup and they heard a heartbeat, and it's my older son. But still, I went through that process, and what we grieved and then celebrated was still the idea of a child, because I held on loosely until he could live outside my womb. I literally did not allow myself to feel excitement until about 20 weeks, when I knew that if he was born, he had a chance at survival. and that's important.
Well, I still want
That's
to
not
unpack.
factual.
I want to unpack Joe's analogy.
Mhm.
So, because when you say stuff like that, it causes me to go into almost an academic connection. So, you don't think a woman carrying a child, that child is a part of her body?
I think it's a different process.
No. The question is, do you think a child is a part of the woman's body as the child is inside of the woman?
Well, look, obviously it's connected to her because it's necessary for a baby to grow in that
So
way.
yes,
Because we're humans.
it is a part of.
However, I'm a male. I'm a male. I have a different blood type. I have a different personality. I have a different hair type than my mother, and so there's no way that I am her body. And when I was born, I mean, that's kind of like you don't give birth to any other part of your body.
But you can still have a DNA test done or any kind of genetic testing done after giving birth. You can have up to however many kids you have worth of DNA in your body if you're a mother.
And
it's all tied together.
I want to pause and ask Joanna, if you can, please jump in on this conversation, because I know that she's sort of like an expert in this area from both sides.
So I would love. So her ethic is consistent.
Yeah, I would love to get her input on that, Joanna, if you can hear us. And I want to bring in someone else who's going to join this conversation for a little while. Felix Moulton, how are you?
I'm good, man. How you guys doing?
We're good, and we're going to get to you in just a second. We just been real informal tonight. So Joe, I'm assuming that you are not in favor of women having the right to choose if they want to have an abortion or not.
On the contrary, I think, and everybody was up in arms about a heartbeat bill. But I think
they should be.
But I think that's a fair line, a fair line of demarcation.
When you are in the middle of any kind of loss of a pregnancy, and you have to be hormonal, sick as a dog, maybe dying, could get an infection, and you're still going to have to check in with your husband or whoever to get permission to get done what you need to do to save your life in the middle of a miscarriage, then you come talk to me about how that matters, because that is such a dangerous and slippery slope for women. You could kill a woman by saying you don't have this option, and that is not okay. That woman has an independent life that's already established. She may have other children she's got to take care of. It doesn't even matter. She doesn't need to qualify herself. She's already out walking around. This baby can't survive outside of her.
You may be speaking about some details of these bills that I'm not aware of, and
I think you need to read the bill, Joe.
You're probably right. But in its simplest form, I should say, when there's a heartbeat, before a heartbeat and after a heartbeat, I think before heartbeat, it's fine. You can deal with that between you and your higher power, and I think it's fine. After that, it becomes a serious problem. I actually had that conversation.
A heartbeat, Joe.
But in one line of defense before he responds to that, I think it is an excellent conversation to have in dating or preparation for marriage, and to align yourself with someone who your agreement in personhood is that you will not be having an abortion in your relationship. But I do not believe that it is something we should impose on other couples who may have to make a decision, or individuals who may have to make a decision. I will never fully understand the pain that Jennifer just spoke of. I can empathize and I can sympathize, but I cannot identify with that. And so therefore, I reserve a right to not have a real opinion about what should be done to female bodies, because I will never understand.
And
I think that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, and I think that is a fair position to have. And I know
from a legal standpoint.
Well, I know that once we get into the religious aspect of it, then things change. But there's a side to abortion that honestly I just don't think men should even. Whenever you're in a room and when these bills are passed, I know on a federal level, nothing good comes out of a room where you have 13, 12, 25 men talking about a woman's body and there's not a woman in the room. Like
nobody's telling her a woman can't have a hysterectomy. Nobody's telling a woman can't tie her own tube.
Let me go ahead and stop
God.
there because I had that too.
So, Joe, how would you feel if a bunch of women got into a room and said, we're going to have to cut one of Joe's testicles off because we don't want him having...
Vasectomy.
Men aren't doing that. Nobody's saying we're going in and cutting women's ovaries out. That's
okay,
such
but they
a
literally
stupid
just
analogy.
did that in an ICE detention center. They went in and gave women hysterectomies and radical hysterectomies against their will, no interpreters. And this is alleged because it's a whistleblower. But there's one doctor that they'd send them to who would just do all the hysterectomies.
What does that have to do with anything we're talking about here? Yes, that's
It's all
wrong.
connected, though, Jeff.
Is it possible?
Well, that's wrong. Saying abortion is you can't connect that to abortion. What they did was wrong. Was absolutely wrong.
But forcing a baby
possible?
to be born in our body after
I want to hear from
assault is wrong,
Felix.
too.
I wanted to hear from Pastor Felix.
I would not dare attempt to speak authoritatively here since I am not a woman, but is it possible that the real issue here is that we are, or that men are, trying to oversimplify this? If you just shrink this down to just something as simple as, oh, there's a life in there, or is it a life?
That's not a trick. That's the truth.
That's an oversimplification.
It's not an oversimplification.
And my argument,
life is life. If you murder someone,
you said it yourself. You said, let's just make this more simple. When she gave the details of the argument, that's more involved than that.
That was the details of the bill she was talking about, not the argument against abortion.
That's my point. If you just want to make a bill and put it down and just put it on ink, that's one thing. When it's a person's life at stake, that's something totally different.
If there's a person's
but isn't
life
it interesting, Pastor Felix? Also,
that's different.
Joe, hold on for a second, Joe.
But isn't it interesting also, Pastor Felix, that the same people who will push this agenda about abortion make a different sound of noise when it comes to executions?
Jesus, you're a pastor?
And I am of the school of thought, if I could just make a nice little segue here, if people were that concerned about life, why don't they stop shooting us?
We're going to, and we're going there. Everybody hold on. Everybody hold on, because we're going to get there in just a second. But I want to give closure to this abortion topic, because it is and I agree with Pastor Felix. As men, we oversimplify. There are some mental aspects that go into having to make the decision. There are mental aspects that goes into having to go through with the decision or not go through with the decision. So as men, we cannot even start to fathom what a woman goes through. And I know Joe is in alignment with the white. Joe is in alignment with the white evangelicals who only see don't kill a baby because God is ridiculous. When in the Bible,
say white evangelicals. We'll have to give him a safe space. He doesn't like
that. Okay. So
because I'm not one.
I know.
No. I'm saying
you're not an evangelical.
That's an oversimplification.
The view that they have.
Yeah, right.
That's the view that they have, because and Dr. Reese will attest to this. We were engaged in a conversation where their only talking point, God would not kill babies. And then once I put scriptures on them where God actually did kill babies,
and told people how.
Yes, and God killed babies just for the reason of people not doing what He said do. God actually killed and stripped a kingdom from Saul because Saul did not kill babies in the Bible.
And the only people who didn't get their babies killed had to kill what? Sheep?
Yes.
In certain situations.
So that's a tricky situation. And
generations were cursed because of it.
Yes.
And I have one quick thing I want to add that's really important when you're thinking about abortion. And I say this every time, but I'm going to repeat it again, just in case some people weren't here before. Bottom line, end of the day, if you're pro-life, what matters most? Lives, right, Joe?
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I'm talking about if you're pro-life, anti-abortion. So let's say anti-abortion.
Yeah.
If you're anti-abortion, what is it that you truly desire to have happen? Like, what's your end goal? Simple, like 2 words.
Yeah, birth. Yeah.
Okay, birth. Okay, and I get that, and I understand that, and I lived in that space for a really long time until I started understanding the data and looking at the trends. So in the places where they make abortion the most illegal and the hardest to get, those places have the highest abortion rates. And there's actually something recently from United Nations Human Reproduction Program. It was published in July that says that, and it proves it. And it's proved it over and over throughout the years when they've done the study. You make abortion illegal, people are going to have the highest abortion. But why is that? It's not because abortion is banned and everybody goes, well, now that I can't have one, I really want an abortion. That's not what it is. Nobody looks at their girlfriends. I'm going to quote Wanda Sykes and says, girl, let's go get an abortion. It sounds fun. We'll get our nails done after. That's not the way it works. So what happens is in those places, when you look at what tracks with the prohibition of abortion and complete abolition of abortion, is the things that also track are lack of social services, lack of adoption assistance, lack of health care, especially for women of color. But let me tell you, Joe, you can go to the doctor as a woman 15 times. They're not going to offer you a hysterectomy because you still can bear children and you're married. I'm telling you, at 36, they said you might be too young. And I said, do it. I don't care. I don't need permission. I'm a grown woman. So that was 36. That's not even women who need it younger to have their tubes tied. We have to have permission or like agreement in some places still. So what I'm saying though is in places that prohibit abortion, they're also not offering people a way to bring a child into the world, afford to care for that child, afford to be able to work and not be on welfare. So they're forcing people to be on welfare by not offering them help with child care. That's a state-by-state thing. Some states do it well and some states really stink. And those are the places where you see the highest abortion rates. So the thing that you've got to understand is if you care about life at the end of the day, less lives are lost when you allow more abortions, because you've also got to look at it from the whole life perspective. So like the people who are going to offer that are going to be more liberal in their policies. That's all it is.
Wow.
And the
Communism saves abortions. That's a new one.
I didn't say communism. Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. I did not say
socialism saves abortion.
Socialism doesn't save abortion.
Bottom line is this.
Caring for the least of these saves abortion.
When we say pro-choice, we're not saying kill babies. That's not.
Right.
This
I didn't say that.
No, I'm not saying that you're saying it. I'm just giving a soliloquy about the assumptions of others who are pro-life. When we say pro-choice, no one is saying kill babies. We are saying a woman has a right to choose what she wants to do with her body, and we should support it. If a woman wants to have an abortion, it should be a safe space for her to do that, whatever the situation may be. If she's been raped, if there's a situation or circumstance that will not allow her to bring a child into this world safely, or she's not mentally fit, there are several things that could be put in place for that.
Additional to that, I think Joanna in the comments made an excellent point. She says, whether legal or not, it'll always be the woman's choice. Because if we relate it to something else that's a legal precedence in Georgia, weed has never been legal in Georgia. However, Buckhead, Midtown, and downtown smell like a dispensary. So I don't know if putting a legality in place, I don't know what putting a legality in place is going to change anything. And I'm from the country that smoke weed there too.
It was legal before the 30s, yeah.
But clearly, I mean, in our lifetime, we don't know weed to be legal. And again, everywhere you go in Georgia, you can go to South Georgia, North Georgia, Middle Georgia. There's a dispensary somewhere.
So I want to shift the conversation to this topic because a lot has transpired since the last time we met. We have Dion K in DC who was gunned down by police officers. We have Jacob Blake. We have new developments with the Breonna Taylor situation. So my question is, and I know that we had some conversations about a few things where we all didn't agree on certain things. So has anybody's views changed about the reality of police brutality? Joe, has your view changed as it relates to, do you think police brutality against African Americans is something that the country should see as a problem?
I think police, yes and no. I think police brutality against against African Americans, Black people, should be viewed as a problem. Yes, but I think police brutality against everyone should be viewed as a problem, and it is. It's a huge problem.
But
Um,
is it disproportionate problem?
Do you
yes,
think
yeah, there's a disproportionate problem because white people get killed more by
No,
by
not more
cops.
often.
Joe,
Not
please do not come with
percentage-wise.
those
Numbers.
faulty
No,
statistics?
I'm not.
Wow.
See, here's the problem
Okay,
with
how
using
do I
that
get off the
statistic.
call?
I'm not using that statistic
I
to
just click a button to get
diminish
off?
anything.
Yeah, you are a little bit.
Are you
I'm not
serious?
using that statistic to diminish
No,
the
you
problem of
literally
police
are.
brutality.
Yeah.
Shut up! No, I'm
Joe,
not.
and
What?
hold on, Pastor Felix, can you speak to that, please? Because I don't want to,
I'm asking. Are you serious
What are you talking about?
serious.
about police brutality being greater against white people?
Yes, I mean, this is FBI statistics. They shoot more. They kill. Police
No,
kill more
because
white
white people are the
There's
majority.
just more
No,
of them.
it's because it's
Say
more
that.
of it. It's just that
proportional.
No, it's a percentage. It's a percentage they kill more.
Give me your
It's
numbers,
not
son, and a reference, because I'm gonna need to
I
look
do
at
not
that.
believe that.
Bureau
I do not
of,
believe it.
I think
I
it's the
don't believe
Bureau of Justice.
No, I mean look it up right now and tell me, because I want to know.
Well,
and
unfortunately, I can't see. like I told
you're
you
using your
guys
device.
before.
I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
No,
Honestly,
It's okay. I'm gonna refute it in just a second.
And Joe, what you're doing is, and I'm surprised that you're not a Republican and a law and order person working with the Trump administration, because what you're doing is you are skewing numbers to make this argument or sort of diminish or depreciate this argument. Hold on for a second, of what Black people are dealing with as it relates to police brutality. If that is the case, and I know the numbers that you're talking about, but what you also have to break down is the disproportionate number of white Americans in this country. So, of course, when you look at the percentage based on the population, it's going to look like more white people are getting killed, and that is not the case.
So here's the 2020. Here's the 2020 stat. We got 242 white people killed and 123 Black people killed. Now, what I want to know is, do we have 50% Black people in America?
But we also have
13%.
But I mean, let's really pull it out, because we've also got Hispanic
let's
taking 80
really
deaths,
pull it out.
and then unknown as in like mixed race or unidentified. So the deal is, like, we're looking at an equal number.
Jennifer, post that link you're looking at in the comments.
I will.
And while you do that, I just want to say, typically, Joe will give me George Stephanopoulos a little bit. I mean, you're giving me all Janine Pirro tonight. What in the world? Literally, at the end of the day, we are in a space where, let's say, if not by policing, let's look at all of the historic cemeteries that have been placed in memory of the historic slave under the premise of policing. If we start there, we will not have numbers in comparison. But on a modern scale,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, on a modern scale.
No, just saying the link is in the thing for you.
Those numbers are going to be based on those percentages. So I'm going to let her finish on this, because when you have a smaller percentage of individuals in the United States and you take away a percentage and say these are the groups that have been killed by police, and then you take the larger population in comparison, then you don't see the percentages as different.
It kind of reminds me.
What you also have to take into account is that, and here's the problem with Jack's question. There's a lot more agreement on my part. See, the way we started this thing out is a little skewed.
I can do that, Joe.
Yeah. You also have to take into account that there's a much higher percentage of encounters with police within the Black community than the white community.
That's a whole other problem with the justice system.
Well, but it also is taken into account here, because not only do you have if you have a higher percentage of encounters with police, but a lower percentage of the people you kill in that community versus the people you have a lower contact with, then even then.
Can we just pause for a second and observe the fact that you just said a lower percentage of the people you interact with you're going to kill, and talk about why that right there is the issue?
Actually, Jennifer, we can go even further.
No, the lower I'm talking about you kill more people, the police kill more white people.
I mean,
of course it should be 0%.
Guys, hold on.
It's like we're massaging a statistic when this is about life. It's the same issue that I felt when you guys were talking about abortion. I mean, we're more concerned about the ink than we are about the issue, and you just cannot reduce that like that. It's when I say it's an oversimplification, I mean that we can argue ethics, but at the end of the day, there is a woman who's been brutally gang raped, and she is pregnant. She does not know who's living inside her.
Can we get back to police brutality? I thought we were off abortion.
Well, I'm talking about both. Did you hear my segue? I'm talking about the fact that we're reducing arguments to just simple situations, and they're just not simple. And you are saying that, okay, there's more police going through black neighborhoods and interacting with blacks, but there's less people being killed. And you're looking at that from that proportion. But at the end of the day, they are still killing tons more of us than they are of white people, based on the statistics. It's just I don't want to get lost in the statistics and forget about the heart of the issue.
So if you don't want to get lost in the statistics, why are you trying to use statistics?
Only because your argument is that there are more white people killed than there are black people.
Well, because there are.
It's not, Joe. That's not true. And
oh my God.
Okay, Joe. Listen, I'll break it down for you, teacher style.
It doesn't matter.
Hold on.
It does matter.
We have a class full of students. Okay. And 50% of them get killed. Okay, so that's 50% of them get killed. That's a big percentage, okay? But now if we had, 1,000 students and 50% of them get killed, man, that's an even bigger number, but the percentage is the same. So let's break it down even further. We got that class of 10%, whatever. If 50% of them get killed, that's a big percentage of them if all they got is 10 in the whole school. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. If you're looking at it's percentage, Joe, seriously, it's math.
Yeah.
Even better, you can say that same class where it's 50% of the class that died because of an issue, that class alone, 25 kids or whatever, 24 kids, is only about 4% of the student body population. Right. So that's the same class that's 50% in the room, but outside of the room, they're 4%. And in the whole city, they're even less of the percentage.
And one of the arguments was that black people have more encounters with law enforcement than white people.
Right.
And that alone is a problem that we don't even have time to even talk about as to why that is the case.
How is that a problem?
And I believe
how is that a problem?
I think Joe
police. No, not necessarily. Know what I'm saying? I mean, police.
Yeah, I think encounters, because he can't be serious tonight.
No, police encounters isn't the same as violent.
Okay,
it is a problem when it's profiling. This is not just regular encounters.
And let's talk about something that will lead to that. And I think it's important to think about too. Listen, police are looking for a reason to harass anybody that looks suspicious. Now, when you're looking at people looking suspicious, that can mean different things to different cops, obviously. If I live in a place that's got a lot of meth heads, if I see somebody that looks like a meth head, they're going to look suspicious. And I'm going to harass them. Why? Because I think they have drugs. That's my in. Now, if I think they have drugs, I say probable cause. I try to arrest them. Cool. Now, I shoot them whenever they resist arrest. But why were they resisting arrest? Because I was harassing them. Why was I harassing them? Because I was profiling them. Why was I profiling them? Hold on. Yeah. Why was I profiling them? Because drugs are illegal and you can get them in jail for that. And it's just like Al Capone and his taxes, whatever gets you into the jail, right? So let's take it down to a basic level. And this is something that is kind of addressed in the new Jim Crow. But if you were to just decriminalize drug possession, it'd be so much easier on police. There'd be less paperwork. And guess what? They're not going to have a reason to harass anybody of any color, but especially not African-American people who do drugs, by the way, the same amount as white people, if not less. Because listen, and hear me out, I could walk around my white suburb neighborhood, my good Christian suburbs, and I could probably find a vape pen and some ground up pain pills people have been snorting and some Adderall that some moms have been selling for their kids. I could probably find that within 50 feet of my house. And I live in a really nice neighborhood because I live with my parents because I'm a millennial.
50 feet is a very short distance.
We live in a really small community. So listen, so here's what I'm saying though. The deal is, you got to look at the root of the problem. They keep certain structures in place so that they can harass who they want to. And then who they pick a lot of time is Black and brown people. There is a root problem that I think you will agree with, which is giving them the probable cause excuse to say that they resisted arrest, which is all bogus, so that they can put people in jail, arrest them, whatever.
Or kill them.
That very well may be true, and I agree. That
and I know you
root cause,
my issue with Joe is when you hit him with facts like that, he diminishes the truth of what is being said and doesn't acknowledge.
I just agreed with it.
No, you agreed, but it was sort of this passiveness about it. We need you to agree.
No, I wholeheartedly agree that drugs should be illegal, that we should have more freedom. That's why I'm a libertarian.
No, you're agreeing that drugs should be legal or illegal or whatever you just said, but can you agree that that your argument about white people being brutalized and killed by police officers is a huge statistic that doesn't take into account the percentage as it relates to the overall population? And Miss Gloria, somebody's asking what you think because you're sitting there looking at us like, I'm gonna let these youngins argue it out.
No, I think it's very interesting, to even imagine, how to play with the numbers and try to make them fit what it is that you want to believe.
Yeah.
But Jennifer is absolutely accurate about the percentages, and so is Chris. If we are a much smaller percentage of the population, so therefore anything that happens in our group is going to be more devastating. So you're talking apples and oranges. I think it's easy to kind of to stir the pot and see what's going to happen. But police are very brutal there. Black children are getting treated very badly right now.
I wholeheartedly agree that police are being trained. This warrior training, they call it. I would have to have a really good argument to convince me that police are not being trained to view us all. Is my overarching point from where I started, to view us all as enemy combatants on a battlefield rather than fellow citizens to serve and protect. That's what I believe.
But
so
Joe,
that just combines
so
with
let me ask the question.
To make it
with that in mind, what do you think is going to be the logical end of the conversation we were previously having, if that is the case? If we are having way more encounters and they are being trained now to be warriors in a neighborhood, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, you do. Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think where you're going with that is a good point. I think that kind of training brings out the worst in anybody. And Ordinary Men was a great book. You guys should all read it. It brings out the worst in people. And if that worst in people is racism, then yeah, you're gonna see that kind of thing happen. You are going to see a focus on Black people. Now that can be for one reason or another. It really honestly depends on the individual police officer.
Well,
now,
I think you're going to see something that is disproportionately worse if it's just a regular, kumbaya, everybody loves everybody, and you train them to be warriors in a neighborhood where there's a sandbox and a swing set. If you add racism, we're in an entirely different ball game now. This is going to be a bloodbath.
I don't think you're entirely wrong on that. And it's a real problem.
I want to go back to Joe's statistic because on the flip side, this is the argument people make when it comes to African Americans being incarcerated. Everybody argue the fact that the African Americans we have more people incarcerated than the white population. No one takes into account, again, the percentages and the proportion of a society of people. And so even those numbers are skewed. And it's just very, it's very bothersome to me. As you all can see, I'll take it a little personal because when you take those numbers and you try and make it seem like it's not that you're doing this, Joe, but I know people who do this who diminish and depreciate several Black people getting killed on the streets.
Yes.
And when you say things like, well, more white people get killed, that's almost like saying when you say Black,
yeah, I can
White
see how
lives matter
I can see how you can see how that would be inflammatory
It's the
because of the
wrong answer.
connotations.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's the right answer, which it's not, it's the wrong answer.
What
Like for the conversation.
Well, he asked me a question. I said yes and no, and the reason I even threw that out there is because you're right about the incarceration rate, and we're playing. Okay, so sort of the questions that we're dealing with now, we're playing on the field of statistics and the number of the percentages of the different populations in America and how much they're incarcerated. I don't like playing on that particular field. I think, like Jennifer brought up, the root causes is where I like to focus. And so when we play on this field, we run into, loggerheads. We run into these sort of miscommunications and things where we're trying to, work out the details on a playing field that I don't even think we need to be on. We need to be playing a different game.
So
we shouldn't enter that portion of the conversation because we should get stuck at the first step and fix it.
Exactly. You get bogged down in the details.
So I want to address two things, and we're going to move from this particular topic. Jacob Blake, I'm assuming all of us have seen or heard the story. Some of us have seen the video.
Yes.
Some people are arguing that the cops had no choice but to shoot him 7 times in the back. Some are arguing that it was a senseless shooting. I want to ask you guys, what did you see if you saw the video? Did you see officers who were in fear of their lives, or do you see overzealous police officers who shot a Black man? Full disclosure, there are some reports saying that he was a rapist and all of that, and they were trying to detain him.
Was he raping somebody then?
No.
So my question is, and we'll start with Pastor Felix on this.
Oh.
Do you see? What do you see when you saw that video? What did you see?
I'm gonna be honest with you. Can I have a little liberty here?
Of course.
When I saw that video, I saw other videos. I saw a video of a Caucasian man who was, I don't know, he must have been really doped up on something, but he came out of a house with a machete and he was chasing police officers. He was screaming expletives at them, and he started swinging this machete, and he was chasing police officers who would not shoot. There were 3 police officers, one man with a machete, and he's talking to them, and they, for the purpose of preserving his life, they would not pull a trigger. And I could not help but see videos like that one and other ones that I've seen where I'm like, okay, what's the difference here? We got cops, we got guns, we have a perpetrator. This perpetrator happens to be white. He can swing a machete at a cop. The cop has no fear for his life. We have another man who's unarmed, who we suspect may be heading to the car to pick up a gun, who could be tackled before he gets to the car. And you shoot him in the back? I mean, what am I supposed to think?
Dr. Reese, I want to hear your perspective.
I agree with Pastor Felix. I think that there are so many other things that could be done. I wonder what makes us so trigger happy when there are certain circumstances and why those tend to be so common and why the common denominator seems to be so familiar. And at this point, it's disheartening. It's almost scary to a point where, even if someone commits a crime, for those who may not be committing crimes at all, this is not something you see a sign of avoiding before something happens. What if I'm mistaken for someone at a gas station? Or what if I am driving and pulled over? And that's nerve-wracking enough because I've never had a ticket of any sort. So for me, the fear of what could happen is pulling on me. It pulls weight for my experience. And it makes me nervous in the sense that something negative could happen to someone that I love. It could happen to myself. I have a building of 1,500 students, and I'm concerned about those who are walking around. They look hood. They have the look. They walk hood. They're sagging. Their hair is in the little sticking up things that I don't even like. But at the end of the day, they're babies, and most of them wouldn't hurt anybody for any reason, or steal anything, or do anything outside of the law. But they could be profiled, or they could be selected without even knowing that this bullet is on its way toward them, and that is quite fearful.
Miss Gloria?
Yeah, as I was listening to you all talk, I had heard about Jacob, but I hadn't read. I certainly don't watch those videos. I think that vicarious traumatization is real, and I have a lot of, I really struggle, and so I don't watch those videos. But I think about, ever since this I think about my son, and I think about my grandsons, and I think about my daughters and my granddaughters and all of my nieces, and I can't help but be afraid, if they have a grandson who's barely 20 years old, and he's over 6'8", and he's a basketball player, so he's used to, he lifts weights, and he's loud, and he's, and all my kids, I think about when they leave home, are they going to come back? Are they going to do something? My son was telling me he got pulled over. He didn't call me the day that he was pulled over, and I'm glad he didn't. And when he started telling me the story, my heart pounded in my chest, and all I could say is, please, I'm just praying in my head as I'm listening, and grateful that I can hear my son's voice, that he didn't get hurt, right? His feelings was hurt, right? Because he got pulled over. He said he wasn't doing anything wrong. Police officer said he was following somebody too close, and he tried to make the argument that his car has all these sensors, and it dings when he gets too close, and so on and so forth. But all the while, I'm thinking, I could have lost my baby today, and for nothing. I don't think any of us should have to live like this. I think about, and I can't remember her name now, but she wrote this really powerful book on post-traumatic slave syndrome. Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Joy DeGruy.
Joy DeGruy, yeah.
Yes, right, Joy DeGruy, and I heard someone say, how can we be experiencing post-traumatic slave syndrome when we are still being traumatized on a daily basis?
Wow.
So therefore, we can be struggling as a mental health professional. I know that we can be struggling with post-traumatic slave syndrome, but I also know that on a daily basis, we are reminded of our place. We are reminded of our value, and we are traumatized. We are traumatized by what might happen to us. We are traumatized by what we see happening to our children. We are traumatized every day. We're traumatized because we have this disproportionate number of people who can't get access to good health care and will likely die because of this new pandemic, that we're experiencing. We're traumatized in a way, y'all, that I don't think white people can understand, because they don't have this history that we have in this country.
Yeah.
And when you hear Miss Gloria talk, and you hear, I don't know if y'all felt the chills while she was talking, but imagine this is a grandmother and a mother who, this is her at the thought of losing a child. What Miss Gloria has just articulated is what Black people live with every single day of our lives. I mean, rich, powerful principals, educators, pastors, it doesn't matter. This is what Black people, what she just articulated, and I'm going to get Joe and Jennifer's take on it as well. But this is something, and when Ms. Glory makes the statement, white people won't understand. That's not putting the race card. That is a truth. That is a truth that is just a truth. And I have white friends, and I'm very honest with my white friends. They're very honest with me about certain things, and and we have these conversations. I think if you're going to have friends of different races, it's a waste of a friendship if you don't have these intense conversations at times without it ruining the friendship. Because there's a history of Black people that white people really need to, and I think it's the 1619 project that they're talking about in California that President Trump wants to ban, because it reveals so much history that people really need to know. And then you will understand why Black people view law enforcement the way that we do, why Black people have these sort of defensive mechanism when it comes to white people. And it's not something that we want to do. We have been conditioned based on our history to respond a certain way because of the history. And I think it was Malcolm X who said, Muhammad Ali was asked the question, well, all white people are not bad, so why do you treat all white people a certain way? And Muhammad Ali said, well, if I see a bed of snakes and you tell me that there are snakes in this bed of snakes who are not poisonous, why would I spend my time trying to pick out the non-poisonous snakes and risk getting bitten by the ones who are poisonous? So when you see a lot of people who are not as aware as we are, then it becomes because there are some Black people, you're dealing with the nice Black people on this panel, because they don't want to hear.
I'm friends with a few who are not, and I support them.
So they don't want to hear anything that a white person has to say about anything. Yeah. So it becomes now, how do we as a community get those people to listen the same way that we want white people to listen to us? So, and I wanted to just sort of segue with Ms. Gloria's statement, because that's a very serious issue. So Joe and Jennifer, I would like to get you all's response to the Jacob Blake situation. We'll go with Jennifer.
Joe.
Yeah, I think Jennifer's go first because I've talked a lot.
Okay. Well, I have too, but I just want to go before you because you're more likely to cause a conversation, I think. You know this. I have a question for you, Miss Gloria, because I appreciated your take on the trauma. And I'm thinking, and I'm trying to find a way to translate this into white people, just in case, because I speak white. But I know that, like, looking at a situation like the quarantine or COVID-19, we've been hearing constantly, day in and day out, messaging about mental health from the perspective of trauma. And I know that, like, I know because I've read about it, that, like, repeated trauma has a different effect than acute trauma. Long-term trauma that happens over and over, such as what would happen if you lived in a home where you were repeatedly sexually abused. Repeated trauma has a completely different effect that's much more hard to undo and get into. And I would really appreciate you kind of explaining the difference in how our minds respond to repeated trauma versus acute trauma.
Well, so acute trauma is something that happens one time and it's right here in the moment, right? And if you have enough resilience or enough resources to be able to manage that trauma, then it can be managed pretty quickly. But if you have something that happens repeatedly, and what I was thinking about is I was listening to Zach talk, was this whole idea of people running when the police come at them, Black people. What are we when we have a traumatic, say you have an acute trauma, just a one-time event. But guess what? It's like a dog. If a dog bites you, right? If you're attacked by a dog, okay. So what happens is that your brain is designed, it's very efficient. It's designed to hold on to the memories of things that might cause a threat to the integrity of the system. So if you are exposed to that situation again sometime down the road, it's going to release the same hormones and tell your body to prepare to fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so why would a person who has a history of chronic traumas in this country not almost immediately take flight? Because your brain is telling you, when you see a white man with a gun, you see a police officer accosting you, you see something that is a threat to the integrity of the system. So the first thing you need to do is think about running. So the more you have these things happen over and over and over, Bruce Perry explained it very much more nicely than I can in this moment. But then the synapses, things are open up, right? So these nerve ends, the parts of your brain that communicate, the more you're exposed to stuff, they end up staying open. So you
create the neural pathways.
You live. That's right, the neural pathways, and so then you live in a state of heightened excitement. So you're ready, right? You're primed for something to happen. So, and it does take longer, but it's possible, to mediate the situations, the symptoms, reduce the symptoms, but it takes a little bit longer because it's a little more embedded.
Thank you.
I know. Did I answer your question? Sometimes I can answer
and does that affect things like blood pressure?
You answer like any question.
Your blood pressure, your heart rate, your all kinds of levels. I recently, as a result of things changing so much because of COVID-19, my blood pressure went through the roof.
Same
right
here.
And my and then I developed shingles, and and all of it is stress related. And so and some people are probably more prone to things than others. I have my own history. I have my own trauma history, and I am an African American woman who is a descendant of formerly enslaved people who grew up in the southern part of the United States.
Right.
So I got my own stuff that I brought to this pandemic. And yes, it is impacting me differently than probably some of my peers.
I could pick it back just a little bit in saying that we also, because of that, create social constructs within community based on those experiences. So there is a sense of deviance when you stand against that in which is common. So why won't you just go this direction? Because that's the way our people have gone for years. And to stand against that is sought as and seen as deviant. So those social constructs, they conduct themselves in ways where there are rules, regulations, and norms based on the traumatic experiences that we engage in consistently and tie in and buy into by generations, year after year, generation after generation.
I can remember hearing my grandmother say, "If I don't beat you, the white man will." So there's a social structure. There is something that's being taught. I mean, we've been taught lots of things, and those things don't go away easily.
Epigenetic trauma, man.
And there is a whole lot of stuff. And so the epigenetics is really interesting because, I mean, y'all, we can have a whole conversation about this. But the epigenetics is about and I sometimes struggle with pronouncing some of these words, methylation of your DNA. So some of the stuff that our ancestors experienced has impacted our DNA. So
I mean, it can be as simple because they recently came out with something saying that women who experience trauma during pregnancy pass their trauma on to their children.
yes,
so, I mean, there is actual scientific,
axis.
Data that backs that up as well.
Yep, there's epidemiologists tell us that trauma during the perinatal phase can impact the HPA axis in unborn fetus. All right.
Thank you.
And this is why Miss Gloria is Miss Gloria.
She's a boy.
She's Miss Gloria.
Thank you.
I wanted to say too, man. I'm just sitting here. I'm listening to this conversation. I'm having a blast, and I just happened to glance up and look at the shirt that I've got on, and I'm thinking this is one of the things that really kind of vexes me when it comes to America and the ideal of America, because I'm thinking about the exonerated five, and I think about the fact that we make movies. It's not like there's no There's no secret here. And every time we start having conversations with people, every time somebody gets killed, there's some forum that says, we got to talk about race. We got to talk about race. I'm like, while you're talking about it, you could just stop killing people. And they make it seem like it's some kind of mysterious thing that we're chasing down. But we can make a movie about it while it is still going on. And we will watch the movie. And like, I think that even increases the trauma because it's like we relive it again. It's anticipatory stress that people go through. And we got this movie. We got, God, how many movies about Malcolm? How many movies about Martin? I mean, each time the end of the story, a black man dies. And we still come away feeling like, man, what are we gonna do?
Well, and we're all police brutality for a moment, and
exonerated.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm gonna get to you in just a second, but I want to make a statement in response to Pastor Felix. And what you've just said, I immediately started thinking, and it sounds so harsh when we say white people. But what has happened with the counterparts of our other race?
Just say white people.
I say the proverbial white man.
Yes, I think they are traumatized as well from what their ancestors perpetuated against Black people. And so what happens is, I think innately, and there's a deep-seated fear that at some point there's going to be a generation of Black people who are going to rise up and say, we don't just want equality, we want vengeance. I think that is the fear that a lot of white Americans deal with. And even when you're talking about as simple as just stop killing people, we have to understand that this country was founded by white men who killed people. And that's how they have always gotten what they wanted. A Native American have something, kill them. A Black person have something, kill them. Another white person have something, kill them. So
look at Europe and their history.
Yes.
I mean, it's since the dawn of man.
Look at Africa and its history. Look at Native Americans and their history. Yeah, it's all about conquest.
And so it goes to the response of police brutality. And there's a mental health component to this that we don't have to unpack tonight, Ms. Gloria. But the response, even when I see people talking about the response of Black Lives Matter individuals, which is a segue to our next topic, when they talk about how rioting and burning down buildings. And my take on that is, when you have an oppressed people who have been oppressed for 400 years or more, and then you tell them, and all respect to Dr. Martin Luther King, we went through an era of nonviolent marches. We have said emphatically, we are tired of you killing our people. We've said that emphatically. We've made movies about it, as Pastor Felix said. So now you have an oppressed people who are trying to respond to their oppressor in a language that they cannot understand. So now what happens is the oppressed is thinking, I have to speak to the oppressor in a language which only they can understand, which is violence, which means, and pardon my French, Pastor Felix, when I say this, which means now the only thing they'll understand is that I have to tear shit up for them to get the attention that needs to happen. Yeah. So when I see rioting, I see a response to what is happening to our people. I don't just see people tearing down buildings. I see a response to a traumatic situation. Go ahead, Chris.
My opinion of that has changed since our last conversation. My cousin, who is an assistant principal in Nashville, at Republic High, changed my perspective in the conversation. For me, I've always played it safe because of the trauma that I engage as a young Black man. I don't create trouble. I don't do anything that could eventually come back to me. You never catch me breaking into the Kroger and walking out with snacks like they did in Atlanta, not too many months ago, because I don't want to show up on film and now my teaching and leadership certification is in question, or I could go to jail. I just don't do dangerous things. So you won't catch me in that light. And I didn't understand why people did those things. And my cousin said to me, she said, well, Reese, you need to understand this. If the system is not working for you, why does it matter if I tear all this shit up? Because at the end of the day, you're not using the system's funding to help me out anyway. And you're going to use the system's funding and taxation to fix it. And then at the end of the day, if it does nothing but make you hear me, then what's wrong with that? And so I may not be the one to go tear it up, but now I understand. Tear all that shit up, dude.
Well,
I want to hear. I want to hear from Joe, guys. He's been trying to get in, and
I really just want to answer. Go back to the Jacob Blake thing, so I'm not unfairly, so I don't seem like a bad guy here. I don't like, honestly, I don't like the police tactics that they used. If they really didn't want him to get, they should to get to the door, any door, they should have stopped him long before they shot him in the back. They should have never let that situation get to that point. Number one, that's just bad tactics. I don't know why they did that. Now, I don't know what set him off. I can't speak to that.
trauma.
So no, but I don't know what the cops said or how, because he was breaking up a fight, which the cops should have been like, "Hey, thanks for breaking up that. Thanks for helping us break up that fight." So I don't. So I feel like it was sort of like
I want to play devil's advocate.
cop.
I want to play devil's advocate. The fact that you just said that the cops should have said that to a black man with locks is not funny, but it just shows because nobody black on this panel, myself, Pastor Felix, Miss Gloria, or Chris, would even think that would be a reality of a cop saying, "Oh, thank you for helping us break up this fight." That conversation would go with a black person. You have started this fight, so we need to question you why the two white people were fighting gets away. So I just thought that was funny, but go ahead.
Right. Okay. But I also think that as far as a lot of this trauma, I think the black community is there. There is reality. There was a reality, a problem of the reality of black people getting killed by cops, of course, especially people like, I think, Philando Castillo, Breonna Taylor, and other innocent black people have been killed by cops. But I do think there is a real problem with the media manipulating people in the black community into being traumatized. Now, I'm sure there's a level of trauma, sure, but I think that's being amplified by the media, and I think that should be looked at. Now, I'm not saying we should do it now. But I think that's for the black community to say, hey, maybe we're being manipulated. And that's one of the reasons why I was bringing up the statistics at the beginning of the whole thing, because it just seems like that's like the focus is on people like Jacob Blake and George Floyd, and it's a real media manipulation.
And
It's
Joe,
a real problem.
And Joe, I don't want to seem like I'm just attacking you tonight, but it's not manipulation when you see on video raw footage of a black person getting killed. It's not. Now I understand what you're saying about the spin from different media outlets and all of that. And I think most black people are intelligent enough to sift through all of that, sift through the smoke and mirrors, as we talked about in our group chat, to get to the real issue. And raw footage of a Facebook video of a black man getting killed is traumatizing.
Sure,
because
yeah.
I'm going to tell you, for me, watching the Ahmaud Arbery situation, watching the Philando Castile situation, those situations for black men creates it could have been me type situation. So it's not about the media manipulation, because
but I think there is still an element to that, because it's like, Reds under the bed from the 50s. It's like, there's a communist under everybody's bed. Like there's just bad cops in every, I say bad cops. There's a cop, every cop in every department is just waiting for their opportunity to kill a black person, regardless of whether they're armed or not. I don't think that's happening.
I'll say this. I don't think anybody, well, I won't say anybody. I don't think the majority of black people believe that law enforcement by and large is just bad. We're just saying there are bad cops. And if the police are indeed police, you would think if anybody could spot the bad cops first, it would be the good cops. And I'm saying, and most black people are saying, if they're bad cops and they're not being policed, then the good cops are guilty. So
Yep,
we're
ACAB.
just saying, look, somebody's got to help us somewhere.
Well, you bring up a good point. There are, and the problem is, and this is again, I'm not on the side of cops here because, there are good cops who, and there was a woman, I think she just won a lawsuit. She was a black lady. She was a cop, and she was one of these good cops who reported something that I think her partner or somebody else in the department had done, like to violate, I think it was a brutality situation. Like she reported it and she got fired for it.
Mhm.
So so that's a real problem. I think that speaks to that.
Line. But you take an oath. We're doing all this swearing and putting our hands on Bibles and all that stuff. But look, if you're going to take an oath to God to serve and protect, and I get it. If that's somebody's job and they're trying to take care of their children, I certainly get it. But my thing is, when I see that woman willing to put it on the line for the sake of her own integrity, I get it. I mean, my thing is, I can't demonize her for that. I'm still saying that's a bigger problem in law enforcement.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah,
And we appreciate when people are very transparent about those experiences, because I used to be a teacher before I led in schools, and I've taken up homework knowing that half of the class didn't do it. Before I even asked for it, I knew that all of them didn't do it. And I still put it in the grade book. Just be honest about what you do, when you do it, and all the things that come along with that.
And I want to shift to, and we'll probably spend a few moments on this, because there's a lot of controversy about this particular statement. And so I want to hear from Jennifer, Joe, Ms. Gloria, Dr. Reese, and then Pastor Felix in that order. What do you see or hear when you see and hear this statement? We'll start with Joe. Try and keep it like 60 seconds, Joe, please.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. I hear two things. I hear, honestly, there's in that same interview with Bill O'Reilly that I just happened to be listening to. He was like, I have no problem with the slogan, small Black Lives Matter. Yeah, totally. I don't like the leadership. They're a bunch of communists, and I think it's terrible.
But who's the leader?
The founders and the
But
two
I mean, like,
co-founders.
who's in charge of it? Is it an organization?
We don't even know who they are, and we black.
Yeah, like I missed my last Antifa meeting because nobody texted me. So
Okay.
Well, I mean the founders.
I know what you're saying, but I'm just saying.
I'm sorry if you're not aware of it. That's not my fault. They are avowed communists.
I am aware.
Trained Marxists is their word. So I don't like them. I don't respect them.
This last time, and
I hate you heard black people call themselves communists and Marxists.
Well, Joe is he has to be being facetious because
okay.
What they have said, they subscribe to a socialist Marxist philosophy.
They're very leftist.
Yes.
Not liberal, they're leftist.
If you research Karl Marx, if you research socialism, it is really not a bad thing. And we don't have to unpack it now.
By trade, I'm a sociologist. I teach the class, but I just have never heard black people just call themselves that. Now
I know it's quite weird, but
they're too busy actually seizing the means of production.
But I hate for them to take on a description that they have not called themselves. So I just wanted us to use whatever language they use, because even though I don't know who they are, I know that wasn't the language.
Trained Marxist is the direct quote that she used.
But if we're gonna demonize Marxism and socialism,
right.
Well, we can't just. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, there are other idealistic societies that are not 100%, and people still subscribe to them, such as the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all of that.
That's why I said I've got no problem with the slogan of Black Lives Matter. I just don't like the
I guess the question is not the slogan. Do you believe it?
Well, of course.
Okay, that's I think more important.
Yeah,
than
yeah.
Okay, we're
Well, that's
back
what I
to
said.
the ink. We're back to the ink and the versus the ethics. That's what I was talking about earlier, man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I
My
said.
thing is, my thing is,
And I
what
know you believe that,
is,
Joe. I'm not trying to knock you. I know that you believe that and that you live that.
Right.
Yeah, Joe. This is just the media. We're just trying to influence people that are watching. Come on, Joe.
Right, and
Dude.
Pastor Larry's
gotta
not here,
spin
so
it,
you get to
man.
take it all.
yeah, Pastor Larry, we miss you. But my thing is, you have, and I hate to say white evangelical Christians, but we'll use that term for this country.
I'm not evangelical and Methodist.
Yeah, but we have white evangelical,
The frozen chosen.
and we have Trump. Okay, we have President Trump. White evangelical Christian. I want to hold up both fingers. When you lay out why you should not support President Trump as a Christian, not white or black, but as a Christian, and you point out why you should not support sexual assaulting, womanizing, narcissistic, ancestral potential having president.
Sounds a lot like Joe Biden.
You lack,
No, it doesn't.
it's the same principle. How can you support? You can support a president where you don't necessarily agree with him, but you can't get behind an organization just because you don't agree. Because the bottom line is they are pushing the idea that Black Lives Matter. Do I support everything that the leaders stand for? I do not, and I never will. Do I support the mission of Black Lives Matter as it relates to making sure people know that Black Lives Matter? I will. Do I support their vision to deconstruct the Western family unit? I can't say that I do, but I support what undergirds the organization, which is the phrase Black Lives Matter. And I think people miss the point because they're so busy pointing out that Black Lives Matter and Antifa, Jennifer's favorite organization, is a terrorist organization. Yet nobody's saying anything about the white militia on the right who come to all of these protests with machine guns. Nobody's saying anything about Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot protesters at a Black Lives Matter rally. I mean, there's a strong, even back to what we were talking about as it relates to police. The other issue about police brutality, there's a disconnect because of our perspective. Go ahead, Jennifer. I'm sorry.
Okay, I gotta step back just a second because I am getting and I may cuss and I'm sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and lay that out because I'm not really sorry. I'm just saying that because there's a pastor here. I'm a pastor.
I do it all the time.
So I
Sorry.
held in for a really long time. Now I'm 40. I don't have to. So the situation of it is, Black lives absolutely matter. 100% they matter. There's no equivocating. There's no apologizing on my part for saying that. I do not care. Of course, all lives matter, but we can't truly say that until we can say Black lives matter and mean it. Okay. And I also do care about the unborn. So everybody missed me with that because I'm not in the mood. Now, I want to go back to what you said about sounds like Joe Biden. And I know that that's not on topic, but I have to unpack this a second because I am irritated as hell with the whole attitude that's coming out about Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden. He's creepy. He's like that one uncle that you don't stay alone with. I get it. That's personal preference and personal thought. He's not babysitting my kids, though. He's running the country. So here's the thing. Okay, number one, we're all obsessed right now because of pedophiles, because people are spreading QAnon nonsense that is meant to divide us and distract us from the point. The QAnon thing is a complete red herring, and it's actually harming the purpose of like the actual mission of many places that are meant to prevent pedophilia, meant to prevent human trafficking. You know, don't talk about Wayfair cabinets. Don't talk to me about any of that bull crap. It's not important right now. Now, I'm going to say that because I'm about to say something about Joe Biden, and I'm not defending him. But what I'm saying is we have a president that people picked that is in the White House who is on record saying he likes to grab women by the pussy. We have a president in the White House on record saying he might hit on his daughter if he wasn't her dad. We have a president who's had 3 wives. Now, I'm not judging him because that's not my place to judge him. But if I'm going to be judgy about marriage and sexual ethics, then I'm going to hold him to the same standard that I hold myself. Granted, I don't hold him to the same.
Oh, don't forget the porn star that he cheated on his wife with.
Oh, I'm sitting there.
Wow.
On point.
Melania
Oh,
was
that's
having-
not. She's not even the first porn star. He cheated
let
on her
me,
with
let me finish.
Karen
guys,
McDougal.
I hear some men talking over me right now. I'm going to reclaim my time. So what I'm telling you is,
Keep talking.
Go ahead.
They'll hear you in a minute. Just keep talking.
so what I'm saying is, we've got that. He paid off a porn star while his wife was pregnant. Okay, so we've got all this literally on record. Joe Biden smells kids in pictures sometimes like a creepy grandpa. Okay. And he has a woman who has accused him. And somebody called me out about Kavanaugh. Now listen. And they were like, well, Kamala Harris said she believes women. Now I want to go on record to explain why I'm supporting Joe Biden. Believing women doesn't mean the women are telling the truth and you believe them telling the truth. Believing women means we give enough credence to their claims that we investigate it to see if it's worth investigating, and then we do the job. It means we listen to them instead of doing what was done to me when I was sexually harassed at a job where I went to people above me and said, so-and-so's at it again. He's done it to several women. And I was told, this won't end well for you. I wouldn't push that button. That's not believing women, because they might have believed me. In fact, the person did believe me, but she also was wise enough to tell me, wait until it happens in front of somebody. It didn't ever happen to me in front of somebody. It happened to somebody else. He got fired. It's a whole thing. But what I'm saying is, the reason that I can feel confident is, yes, Joe Biden did racist, stupid things. Yes, he says racist, stupid things. But we elected a man who says racist, stupid things and said, he didn't really mean it. So if what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I'm not saying it's right. And I'm not saying I like it, but I care enough about my country to say, person who would literally be in jail if he weren't rich and weren't protected by the presidency versus man who they can't really make a good case against, who actually could be prosecuted but hasn't been because they don't have enough evidence.
Well, and we have to
So I had to
understand
break all of that down because to me it's important and it's different.
we have to understand that the dignity of the office of president has depreciated. It has depreciated unlike any other after Trump leaves office. And I hope it's very soon. It will take a lot of something. I don't know what it's going to take. It's going to take God, two white men in the Holy Ghost to help us rebuild the dignity of the office of the president of the United States. People literally laugh at us in other countries. Like, how could we pick a reality show real estate mogul as to lead our country? A man who has, and let me take this Black Lives Matter banner down because we but how can we pick a man who has, during his entire term, undermined experts? You can say, and this is what Trump supporters, I think, need to talk to Miss Gloria, because how could you trust a man who says, I know more than the general, when you have several
Or more than the
generals
My
who
God.
have come out and said, listen, and I'm paraphrasing this, and they're trying to warn us, you all do not understand. We have seen dictatorship firsthand. Like, these are four-star generals who have seen firsthand what dictatorship looks like.
Right.
And these are Republicans, some of them. These are Democrats, some of them. And most military generals are by nonpartisan. They just are very patriotic and they care about the country. You have a president who has undermined their authority. You have a president who has no medical background saying, well, if you have COVID, drink some bleach.
Wow.
Undermining other authorities in the medical field, and people actually believe this foolishness.
But
So
you know what? Believe it or not, the funny thing is, where I'm suffering, I have become so accustomed to laughing at speeches over these 4 years that when I had watched the DNC and was actually listening to a speech, I had to keep pulling myself back to pay attention because there were actually speeches being done and there was no laughing at what the content was. And then I love Stephen Colbert. I love Joe Scarborough. What are we going to talk about? Because The View has a field day on Donald Trump, and he gives them the material, and it has become so comedic that I just don't know what we will expect from someone generations down to be like his president. We're almost asking Joe, who has, or even Kamala, who has a legal background, to be entertaining. And she may not be entertaining. She actually might do the work, but we've been entertained to an extreme, to a point where, I mean, literally, this guy just said, the guy from the CDC says, oh no, we will be in the second or third term of 2021 to get an actual vaccine. He says, well, no, he might have been mistaken. Are we talking about the leader of the CDC being mistaken? Like,
And
it's that whole, like, it's the double.
It's amazing. It's honestly amazing for me to watch people actually support. And
bro, please.
It's amazing to me to watch, to the point where I really want someone to do a case study or a social experiment to see what mojo does this man have. He literally could kill somebody in Central Park and they would still support him.
Here's what I hear here's what I think based on my experience.
Well, Joe Biden could kill somebody in Central Park and still elect
Joe
him.
Biden can't even stutter, and he has a stutter.
Let me mute my microphone.
Well, let's put that to the test with the ever so unpopular Barack Obama. Let's put him under the same scrutiny.
Oh, they would have already lynched him.
Oh yeah.
No, he would have been reelected.
No.
Are you serious?
Well, I mean, I wish we could.
The man couldn't even stay at his own church. He had to leave his church in the country where they want everybody to be Christian. He had to leave his church.
No, listen.
Leave his church to stay in the White House. Which one is bigger?
Talking about President Obama.
Are you talking about yourself?
No, I'm talking about just to be elected. They were scrutinizing where the man attended church, and they won't scrutinize this man.
And yet he still got elected and reelected.
Well, after he did something different, he had to get out of there. What have you seen? What have you seen the current president change when he's been corrected?
Well, he's done more for the African American people since Abraham Lincoln.
He doesn't even take feedback. He doesn't hear feedback. I bet he sees it as criticism and then decides it's something to be scoffed at.
Well, I mean, they have people who hand him a curated amount of mail or news in the morning, and it's the news that they'll allow him to have. And it's gotten to where he's too sensitive for Fox, so he goes for that one channel, Family something or other, that's not even real. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like I feel like people are rabidly supporting an SNL version of a president.
Oh wow!
It is a problem.
I'm going to pause for a second because I know Miss Gloria have to.
You got it, bro. You have got to get an applause soundbite because Jennifer is worthy. You understand?
I want to pause for a second, and I want to allow Miss Gloria. I want to say thank you so much for coming on tonight, and we will be on this again. So thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom. But we're going to continue this conversation because I have the topic that we want to address.
Are you saying that before I leave? Because
I didn't know if you had to now or.
Oh no. So what? Okay.
Whenever you have to leave.
Oh, okay. Can I say this? I want to say something that I find myself saying a lot lately, and I said the thing earlier about being laser focused. I'm laser focused on my survival. Absolutely. So as it relates to this whole issue of who gets elected into the White House, and I want everybody else to be laser focused on survival, not divided by these petty things that people are being divided by. But I think it's one of the things that we have to do is we have to become, all of us, very intentional about talking to other people about what this means to us this year. We can't leave this up to chance. We have to be determined that we're going to use our best voice. We're going to use our biggest voice. We're going to use all the skills that we have acquired over the years to help influence everybody that we can, everybody that we touch, everybody that we come into contact, so that they understand that this is a matter of survival. And we need to get out and do the right thing, not be overwhelmed by those little issues like, well, did she incarcerate too many Black people? Is he a pedophile? Y'all, I work with pedophiles. Or is, so, or all these, let's not get bogged down by that. As Jennifer said, we know what we got right now, and we need to do better. So wash away that foolishness. Wash away the foolishness. Do what needs to be done. Go grab somebody by the hand. Take them with you to the polls. Do what needs to be done this year. We got to show up. We got to show out.
Wait, how is hang on.
Mm-hmm.
How is focusing on Kamala Harris's record and Joe Biden's potential predilections getting bogged down?
Because it's beside the point.
How is that?
Oh, Lord have mercy, Joe. I'm leaving. I just wanted to say that thing. I'm getting ready to go to sleep. See, y'all can stay up here all night, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm old. First of all, I'm probably the oldest person on here, and I like to go to sleep. I love my sleep. Right? I'm so sorry. My daughter's going to talk about me tomorrow, but I wanted to say that.
My thing is, Joe, that's not what she. Well, first of all, if we're talking about record, then I need to make sure that everybody looks at President Trump's record. But the presidency has become not even about politics.
Yeah,
it's so far beyond that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're right.
Again, it doesn't matter to me. It really does not matter to me.
No.
And like,
I had the opportunity to address a couple of classes this last quarter, and there were students here from Africa and from other countries, and they came here looking for the American dream, and I'm talking to them about the current situation, and these students are saying, "Man, I'm going home," because I talked to them about their plans after they graduate. I mean, how many other generations have we ever heard that people were ready to go back to where they came from versus stay here and see this as a better place to build and to move forward? I mean, that says a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can y'all still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We can't see you.
I don't know where my.
That's your Black Lives Matter avatar.
So I want to shift since Ms. Blow has given us her closing remark on that particular issue. I want to talk about this just for a few moments. I want to talk about this for just a few moments. Religion and race. And there's so many angles we can approach this. Because I want to talk about specifically, because I made a post about white evangelical Christians are the most racist sect of people in the country. And of course, I said there are exceptions to that. And a lot of people, came on and they had issues with what I stated. And I stand by what I said. I said what I said and I meant it. And as my grandmother used to say, before I take it back, I add more to it. And so I believe that, and I'm not talking about where they are just overtly racist, where you walk in their church and they have you seated in the N-word section. I'm saying their close-mindedness and their ignorance allows them to operate in a racist system that they refuse to shatter the delusion that they're in. So when I say racist, I'm not talking about just them saying we don't want Black people in our church. I'm saying they are oblivious to anything that have to do with, if it doesn't have to do with abortion or the LGBT community, white evangelicals really don't have too much to say about anything other than don't be gay and don't kill babies. Yeah. And that's an issue for me.
And Zionism. They love that. And Zionism. They love that one too.
Yeah. So I think this is important because when we talk about religion and race, it becomes a bigger issue. Even the whole family values conversation. And what I'm happy I'm happy that we don't have the president of a predominantly Christian university who likes to watch his wife have sex with the pool guy. I'm happy that that's never happened within the right wing Christian community.
Mhm.
So I'm happy that that has never happened. I'm happy, that these things are simply reserved for Democrats and those who are pro-choice. So I'm happy, that we don't have a president of a major university who is in a scandal right now for posting inappropriate pictures of him with his wife's assistant. And so
Let Jennifer back in.
you said what now, Chris?
Let Jennifer back in.
Before we kick the door down, buddy.
I don't know where she is.
Yeah,
I
because
thought she-
and if you missed the interview of the young man that talks about Falwell with his pants below his waist, you must listen to it, because as explicit and real as it is, the recordings are even better, because you can't deny that. But I'm still waiting because I know that the evangelical pastors are going to speak down on him and tell him what place he's supposed to be in and what he's supposed to be doing, and carry their strong Bibles and get him together.
Oh, we don't kink shame a Graham. I mean, what's his name? Which one is he?
Falwell.
We don't kink shame Falwells. Come on.
Yeah,
Now.
they're interchangeable.
Man.
Yeah, you can't mess with them. They own the college.
He gonna get caught up. Well, he did.
Well, if we can't slut shame, we shouldn't be kink shaming.
Oh, I think that.
So does racism exist? My question is, does racism exist in Christianity?
You're talking about authentic Christianity or the?
I'm talking about. Well, let's talk about Westernized Christianity.
Yeah,
A lot of Westernized
it's doggone near part of the doctrine.
It's colonialism.
I don't. Okay. Well, even if it is near, it's not actual doctrine, and it's certainly not in the Bible.
Well, I'm just saying. When they originally carved out parts of the Bible to create a new Bible for the slaves, that was Western Christianity.
Yeah, and let's talk for a second about the fact that there are literally denominations that have split. Let's talk about the Assemblies of God and the Church of God in Christ, and how it took them 70 years to apologize for being buttholes, and evil. I'm sorry, I'm being crass, but I'm mad about it because I grew up AG, and
you sound a little bitter.
Right.
Oh, I'm real bitter.
There's a very important distinction that needs to be made here, and there's a conflation between Christianity, as Zach is pointing out, and Christians.
But
because
also, though,
Christianity is way different than how Christians behave, and even Christian leaders are behaving. So there's a big difference.
There's an element.
Can you unpack your semantics,
please?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, I can.
You have 3 credentialed and trained theologians on this panel, so please make sure, Joe, that you're ready for this conversation.
Okay, excellent.
Right.
Ironically, you're sitting on top of one, and you're in between the other 2. So go ahead.
Get off.
Right.
It's like a messed up Brady Bunch right now.
All your Bibles also say that in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, free nor slave, blah blah. You get it.
And that
how you supposed to obey masters?
And
go ahead.
Well, that's behavior, and that is what you are in Christ, what your identity is in Christ. Because your identity is through Christ and his sacrifice. That's the point of that, and that's where honestly our focus should be. Because we had this conversation last time. I don't see myself as a white Christian. I see myself as a Christian who is white. Can't help that part, but I don't, because I'm not. And the reason I say that, and the reason why it's in the Bible the way it is because we're not supposed to see our Christianity through these filters and through these I guess touchstones, things that can separate these potential.
Can I say that is a luxury afforded to you because of the color of your skin, sir?
No, it's a luxury afforded to all of us because it says it in the
No.
Bible.
Well, but here's my point. Here's my point.
Being able
I
to
would
act
love
out is what
to
it's saying.
just say that I'm a Christian and just not worry about this black issue. But they're not necessarily when I bring up an issue about what's going on with me when I leave church and I say things about what we've been talking about for the last hour, that's when other people who are in positions of power who happen to be Christian, then they say, okay, it's okay to shoot this one, but don't shoot that one. Just subdue that one. And so when I come back to church with my white brothers who happen to be Christian, I say to them, look, I can't say they're killing Christians because they're not just killing Christians. They're killing black Christians. And so I believe the beauty of the cross is that it allows us to come together without abandoning individuality. We can have absolute unity without necessarily losing our personal identity. That's what makes the body multifaceted. And so I don't think we are seeking to divide the body of Christ. We're asking the rest of the body to feel our pain.
And there's a disconnect when it comes to the focus of the theological perspectives. And when I say white evangelical, I'm talking about the I guess the cultural.
Well, it's their voter identity.
Yeah, the cultural term that has taken place now as it relates to politics and things of that nature. So I'm not talking about, a white Christian. I'm talking about the term that, the Jerry Falwells and the Franklin Grahams and the Jensen Franklins and the Perry Mason, Perry Stone, whatever his name is, the ones that all of these people identify with. And to me, if you ask me, I'm gonna tell you, yes, they're racist based on their perspectives, based on their theology, and I would tell them to their face that they're racist.
You can add,
right, but there's no theological foundation for the racism. Is my point. That's the Christianity versus the Christian.
They build a theological foundation.
I hear where you're coming from. You're saying there's nothing in Christianity that supports it. Okay, so then we got a bigger argument. Are they just a bunch of devils?
That's very possible.
Yep.
Yeah, and so if that's the case, why are we looking to these people to determine who we would elect a president?
Absolutely.
You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be.
That's what happens.
Can I tell you?
Well, because people are people. You got fallen people acting in this regard, in this capacity of Christian leadership.
Yeah.
But then you also got fallen people who aren't, who for one reason or another think that these are good people to look to, and they're both wrong. They're both wrong.
And I'll add John MacArthur to the list.
Geez.
I
want to hear what Jennifer was about to say.
So here's a thing that I need to address, and it's something that I run into with a lot of my libertarian friends, which, by the way, the people who I have the most respect for, who are on the right, so to speak, are my libertarian friends because they're usually consistent in their thoughts. Not you, Joe, you troll. But
whatever.
I love you anyway, but you're a troll. So when you're being real and you're not faking it, I like you. So
I'm never. Don't do this in front of Felix. He's just me.
He just met you.
I'm really like this introduction.
I'm Joe's handler. He doesn't like to announce that. So, but it's because we've been friends for 20 years. So anyway, one thing I'd like to point out, and this is something that is aimed at my friends who love to be logical, my friends who love to be rational, my friends who love to speak intelligently, and who are also usually white, usually libertarian, or like Republicans who are disgusted with current Republican policy. Speaking purely about ideology outside of pragmatism is a sign of privilege. I don't mean white privilege. I just mean privilege. So when I say that, what I'm getting at is being able to speak purely about faith, for example, and the ideology of Christianity. Absolutely, you're right. Being able to speak about the ideology of being a libertarian. Absolutely. Speaking about the ideology of being a socialist. Absolutely. They're fine, whatever. But being able to speak in purely ideological things as a set of hypotheticals rather than a pragmatic set of things that are affecting you day to day to day to day to day is a sign of privilege that either one, you are not facing the problems every day in the real world, or number two, you're not being currently abused by the church because of your stance on race. Yeah. And I'm not Black. I don't get the experience of being Black. What I do get the experience of, and it's what I've seen a lot, I warned against it. I even made several posts to my white friends like, listen, I love that you guys are putting Black Lives Matter out there and you're speaking up, but here's what's about to happen to you. All your friends at church are about to start getting angry. If you're a youth pastor, you're probably going to get fired, whatever it is. Like,
say it loud.
It's going to happen. And I know that because I've lived it. And then take that amount of being fatigued and tired and stressed where you want to give up and then lean into it because, like Miss Gloria said earlier, that's the shared trauma that Black people experience just from living. So what I'm getting at, Joe, is to say that you're not wrong as far as the idea of faith. What is a problem is that you're speaking hypothetically and theoretically and just philosophically. That's not the kind of, I mean, it's important talk to have, but it's not where we are as a nation, as a church right now. Right now, we're down to brass tacks where it's like, if you are going to live like Jesus, it's going to make you uncomfortable at this point. We don't like being uncomfortable. We've been nuclear family since the 1950s. We're settled into our, 2.5 children and our pretty house, whatever. We don't like being uncomfortable, and we're being forced to be uncomfortable. And even as much as I'm supportive of certain things, I get uncomfortable. I got friends who want to be like, anarcho-communists and burn things down. And I feel uncomfortable talking about that because that's where my privilege comes in.
Yeah. We're back to the age of you need to pick a side. You need to wear a sign on your chest that says unclean. like the lepers in the days of Christ. So we can't play.
And that snake analogy that you gave about
terrible.
No, it's not. Let me finish what I got to say before you critique it, because I'm telling you the truth. And this is life as I have seen it. I worked in a church for 10 years off and on, whether I was on the payroll or not. They sucked the life out of me and then threw me out whenever I said Black Lives Matter at Charlottesville. So come for me and I will tell you all about it. But, and I don't mean that to you, Joe. I mean anybody in general. I will have all kind of conversations about that later. But the deal is, when you're talking about that snake analogy, the reason that works is, nobody needs to be in there digging around for the good snakes getting bit by the bad snakes. But one thing we can do is what happens in nature when you got a snake or whatever, you can mark yourself. That is one of the reasons why I've been vocal, obnoxious, angry, telling people GTFO my page because I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't care. I'm not playing anymore. I will literally cut you out of my life right now if you are racist. Like, I'm not dealing with it.
Yeah, your medal's in the mail.
But like, I have lost friends and family member contact because I've been blunt about it. And I'm not trying to divide when I say it. I'm always gentle initially.
Well, and my thing is, because I have white pastor friends, Pastor Felix was actually on a panel with me with some pastors, and we talked about this issue. And I don't think that all white pastors are racist, but for me personally, I could not be, and I play the organ. I'm a musician. Some would consider me, and some would not, because I can't play in the key of G. But some would say that, some would say that I'm not. But we have to understand, if you're in a church as a Black person, and everything that's going on in this country, and your pastor has not said anything about Black lives or validated your significance, not only in the country, but as a member of his church, and talk about the value that you bring being a part of his church, because most white churches, and I know this for Church of God, I know this for Assembly of God, I know this for a few churches in Kentucky. I don't even know what their denominations. I just know they cap on the downbeat. But for those churches to love Black music, to love to bring in a Black organist who can give them the Pentecostal the Pentecostal dance moves, but not address the atrocities that Black people are dealing with. In my book, by my definition, I'm not talking about standard definition, that makes you complicit with what's going on. So, that's my position.
And that changed for me also from our previous conversation. I think most of you knew I attended a predominantly mixed congregation with a Caucasian pastor for a long time since I came to Atlanta. And over time, it has not met my cultural needs. As things change and experiences have happened and conversations are at the forefront, I don't see enough. There are some organizational identifiers that I look for. I don't see it on my staff. I don't see myself on the staff. I don't see people that look like me on the staff. And so therefore I've made a change. And I haven't picked completely where I'm going, but I know that the change had to happen. And so I'm researching and looking again. And now I know that's a part of the conversation to have a multicultural church, yes, but one that identifies with issues that are relative to my experience. And so that leads me to changing congregation.
So, Chris, I'm gonna start a church, and you're invited.
I'll be your first member. I'm a good tither too.
I have a question. It's a legitimate question about the situation. Here's the deal. Like, okay, I don't go to church because of COVID, of course. But when we went, we would go to a First Methodist where I could walk in, walk out. Nobody really talks to me. I don't have to whatever. Because I was taking a break. I'm still taking a break.
I thought you weren't going to church because you're a backsliding heathen.
Well, I also was questioning my faith. I'm not gonna lie. Like a lot of days, I don't know if I believe because I don't have a home to be in. And here's my question. And I would like, and I want to preface this because I know that you guys know that I know this, but I want to say this for the listeners or watchers or whatever. I understand that y'all don't speak for all Black people. So when I ask this, you don't have to bear that responsibility. This is just me asking you as Black people in church. Where do I go to church? Because I don't like white churches. And the reason I don't like them is because they don't like me. And so I don't want to go and invade a Black space and take that from the people there because they need that.
Never will you ever find a congregation that feels that way, number one. Yeah. But number two, in the community that you live in, it might be rather difficult. You may have to take a little bit of a drive. I live in Henry County, and I ain't going to church nowhere around here. I just don't see what I'm looking for here. So I drive all the way into Atlanta to get to what I'm looking for that reason alone. But also because my spouse is not what they would have expected. So I had to look for a church that's Black enough, inclusive, and at the same time, I don't leave coming in on Sunday with all of this intelligence Monday through Saturday, and then have to dumb down for the service on Sunday. So there's a level of intelligence that I had to look for in a speaker, and I had to research what type of background do they have? Are they researching? I like to see connections in literature. I want to see you wrestle with scripture the way Jacob wrestled with God. I want to see you fight and make decisions that may not be the right decision as Jonah did. I want to see you challenge the status quo like Jesus. Like, I look for that in the pulpit. And so you have to do a thorough search. You have to look. It's a tiring experience. Looking for a church home is one of the most frustrating things that I've ever had to do, but I knew that I needed something different. And so I'm engaging in the fight. And as I've done so and done a little bit of my research, I'm willing to share what I found with you so that you might be interested in some of the things and churches that I've looked into.
Chris, you can come on down.
My goal would be, I would love to stay in
my church.
Oh, what was that?
Get him a church.
He's inviting you down to make
it. I hear it. Listen, I got a church that I'll drive an hour to go to if I want to drive an hour. Because there's a church in Atlanta that actually is one of their focuses is on racial reconciliation, and I have friends there. So I mean, there's a group there. But I would love to have a church that's in my community. But you can throw a rock around here and hit a church. There's no way on God's green earth that unless Jesus shows up in human form in my bedroom and burns a bush or something, that is going to be something I'm involved in.
Well, Jennifer, you're in Gainesville, right? You're in Gainesville?
Yes.
There's a great pastor there, Pastor Jensen Franklin.
Oh yeah, no.
No,
That's a hard no.
Can I say something? I'll say something. And
That's a hard no.
maybe this will help alleviate some of the anxiety, if there's any. I think the journey is many times as important as the destination, because I think in that process that Dr. Reese just mentioned, man, you researching these individuals, finding out how they think, the things they're wrestling with, the conclusions that they've come to, literature that they may have written themselves, then also visiting and seeing what the culture of the fellowship is like. All of those things play into it, because ultimately God is omnipresent. But if you're a Christian, you believe that you're supposed to connect and plug in with a local body, and all of that process, I believe, is me finding not just a church, but also a close relationship with God. So I think the journey is as important as the destination, even if you find a place and then find out that you didn't find a place. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's my whole life.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's nothing that suggests that you need to put a period where God's put a comma. Keep it moving.
I like that statement.
Yeah.
And don't feel guilty when you visit multiple churches, because church membership isn't biblical anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I mean, having a building isn't really in the Bible either, except for
Right.
And I was going to give my spiel as it relates to. I grew up. My parents are pastors. I come from a long, and Chris will tell you, I come from a long line of
deep rooted, saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost.
In the word long.
It is
hanging on the chandeliers, rolling on the floor, sanctified.
Churches
the snakes are just for the white people.
So it's
that's where we draw the line.
From a long line. My grandmother was a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are pastors. My brother's a preacher. My uncles are pastors.
That's my situation too.
So when it comes to me in church, I'm one of those people. The way my mind works, because I'm so vocal, it's hard for me to. I don't need to do this. Me, yes.
No.
I mean, I'm trying to work on it, but because I'm so vocal, if I can't be in a small church where you can hear me, because I would have been out here like that's not biblical. To the preacher when he's preaching. So for me, I look for so much. Like and I don't think it's a church in America that could really accommodate what I look for. And because I don't say this to be braggadocious, but because I am well studied in Scripture, it takes a lot for me to have any type of appeal. So I look at, because I don't. How can I say this? It's very difficult to preach to somebody like me. And I don't say that to be arrogant, but I say that because I unpack everything, and I have to.
You know who I'm married to, right, Zach?
Yes, Matt.
Yes.
And so for me, because I get offended when a preacher get up and they just prophesying and hollering all over the microphone and not give. I get upset that I've wasted my gas money and my time to come here, and the only thing you can tell me is God is going to give me a new car for $100 offering. I get upset, and
Chief.
So for me, it's just I don't know. It's just it's difficult for me to answer that question, because I would just say stay at home and read your Bible.
Can you imagine?
If I were to ever,
oh gosh, man!
Now, if I were to ever find a church though, and I were to be the pastor of the church, Joe would be my chairman deacon, because I could play a theme song called "Walk Around the Club" for everybody, and Joe would defend me.
It's the dang truth, though. Listen, I just want to go somewhere where people aren't because okay, so here's the thing about white church. It might be the same in black church, I don't know. But in white church, it's like Mean Girls, the movie, except it's everybody.
All
And
churches.
so I struggle because I'm not going to ever fit in and be popular with people who expect you to be a cookie cutter.
Here's my problem with that whole concept. I just think our whole idea about going to church, and understand, I get that church is supposed to basically service a community, but the unfortunate thing is that, like with Jesus, when he had his disciples with him, he was, excuse me, was able to walk with them closely and disciple them. And there is nothing else outside of that. The thing is, when you go to a church, you walk in there and you got to deal with, as you said, the mean girls. And so my thing is, I've always, well, I can't say I've always, but I look at it like when you come into a church, it's not just supposed to be, okay, I'm taken care of and everybody's gonna, help me with whatever. I think even the mean girls are part of the process. Everything that you're encountering is part of the process, because you right now, I know you have some questions about your faith, but you have not denounced it, which says a lot. And I'm kind of a student of Tillich in this respect, that I believe that doubt can be a component of faith, because
Absolutely.
if doubt drives you to investigate, I'm all for it. I think that is better than me just sitting around and easy believism, and having a bunch of sloppy agape and that kind of stuff. So I feel like when you go into a place, you should have to wrestle. You should have to have some nights where you're up. You have to, that sounds like Jeremiah. That sounds like Elijah. That sounds like people who are in a walk with God. Think about it. You're trying to cross this chasm between humanity and deity. That's a bumpy road. And but the cool thing about it is, because of God's grace, he has taken you into his arms. And so I feel like the bumpiness of it is part of the process. And I don't think we should just abandon ship because we run into those mean girls. And I do still feel like, and I'm shutting up after this, I do still hold to this whole concept, that I believe that sometimes when you cannot find a church that fits you, I think it may be that it's time for you to become the church you're looking for, and that is an even bigger challenge, and for that reason, my wife and I, we did actually start a church in our living room back in 1996. And so in February, we'll be celebrating 25 years in that same church. And so I have been trying to, even in that, instill in people that very same ideal that was in my heart in 1996. So
where's your church?
You can't get there from where you're at, just first of all, but we're in Bremen, Georgia. It's just,
no, she's in Gainesville, Georgia, Pastor Felix.
Okay, well, you may be closer than I thought you were. You're still not close. You're closer.
Still not close.
Nothing is close to Bremen.
Nothing.
I've never even heard of it, and I know every city and every town. I don't know.
I'm saying, man, there's no pyramids. There's no signs or anything like that. It's just a very small town, and honestly, it's like years ago when I did the demographics on it. It was 93% white, and I believe the other 7% was a mixture of everything that was left. And of that, I think maybe 2% was black. And I really felt compelled of God to start a ministry there. And this internal, external, I was like, what in the world? This is crazy. And I know I'm a progressive thinker. I'm a forward thinker, and not to mention a recovering black nationalist. So just understand the makeup of my mind. Now, I'm built for this culture right now because I'm a Christian and I love black, man, everything except for my coffee, like Malcolm said. So I am like, this is my world right now. And I feel like, everything I've been through in my life has shaped me for this moment. But it is going there just solidified it, because it's like God forced me to go and build relationships with people who I previously had pretty much cut off. And I know that there are good, people that are not necessarily black. I know that. And so I'm challenged to deal with that when I'm there. And, a lot of people in Bremen, we've really had some great friendships, and all those things. But my church is still predominantly black because, of course, Bremen is still 93% white. But I don't know. I'm not holding against them, and I'm not trying to create problems. But now in this culture with Black Lives Matter, I'm challenging them, white evangelicals and white people, period. Specifically, though, Christians, let's have orthopraxis with orthodoxy. You can't just teach it.
Yes.
You're gonna have to live it, man.
So,
go ahead.
One quick question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's
mine is Mine is timing related. That's the only reason.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to go way back to what you said about my point about trying to, I wasn't speaking theoretically, and it can't just be on that level. I can't just be dismissed as, well, you're talking on a theoretical level. No, and the reason I was trying to deconflate.
No, you talking about me?
Well, Jennifer.
No, I had told him.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to deconflate Zach's description of Christianity is because your situation is a perfect example of why I did that, because there's the faith and then there's how Christians behave. And when you put the two together, if you make the mistake of conflating the two, Christianity is this sort of continuum with how Christians behave. You run into the exact problem that you have experienced, where you've pulled back from the faith because of how Christians behave. And that's why I wanted to, and that's why I said what I said, because there's a difference between the faith and how Christians enact it, because we're all fallen, of course. And my grandmother and my mother, the best advice I've ever been given by them is, you look to Christ. You don't look to other people, and no matter how big they are, no matter how popular, no matter how influential they are, you don't look to them. You look to the example of Christ. And I think, and it really, I wouldn't say galled me, but when you said you wanted to go to a black church, but you didn't want to feel like your white presence was some sort of invasion of their space. And I can just see
there's some all black churches, or mostly all black churches. And at this point in history, I don't want to be making them not free to speak freely, is what I'm getting at.
Okay, well, that's fair.
That's what I'm talking about.
Sure, and that's fair, but that still brings me further to my point after this, is that I can just see St. Paul just spinning in his grave. It's like, that's exactly my point. Any Christian should be able to walk into any church and feel the presence of Christ.
But there's history that backs up my thought. And that's why I'm trying to be careful of. There's a lot of baggage to a white lady walking in an all-black church. Like, is she going to shoot us? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't want to cause discomfort.
Well, Jennifer, now I will say this, based on personal experience, having friends who are white pastors, black pastors, having been to multiple churches, having friends who pastor small churches, large churches, having played at churches where there are predominantly white people, predominantly black people, where there's a mixture. My assessment is this, and there's no statistics for this. Black people receive white people easier in a black congregation than white people will receive a black person in their congregation.
Absolutely, but I don't want to take advantage. Here's what I'm struggling with. A lot of the black churches where I live serve as a spiritual hub, but also, just like everywhere else, a community hub, where, like right now, some of the stuff that's happening where we live is the neighborhood that some of those churches are in are being gentrified, and the rent's going up, and there's a lot of animosity, where I don't want to assume the animosity is there, but I just really, my biggest thing is, I'm fine making people uncomfortable if it's for the right reasons. I don't want to accidentally make someone uncomfortable for the wrong reasons. That's what I'm thinking.
That was bringing me to my last point, which was the reason I said that I brought up the scripture from Galatians, is that, and I hate to disagree with Pastor Felix, but the reason why that's there is because our identity has to be in Christ and through Christ, because so that we don't have these divisive factors. Because if we put these divisive factors in front of the faith, well, then if it doesn't jive with the tenets of the faith, then we have to discard them. Our identity has to be through Christ first, because things can divide us, like racial issues.
But I guess
Well,
my
Joe,
question comes in as a seeker. But
Joe,
when you're a seeker, how does that play into what if I'm a person who doesn't have my identity in Christ yet?
So Jennifer, let me answer that, because what Joe is saying sounds good in theory, but it's not so easy in practice.
Well, it doesn't matter. That's the whole point of being a Christian, is the doing the best.
But he's saying it doesn't work in practice.
It doesn't. It's not. It's not that easy.
You're talking about. Now we're gonna stick with Pauline perspective. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about Galatians, and if we are now one in Christ, this is. I'll jump off of. I'm not trying to cherry pick, but for the sake of the argument, John 4:24, God is a spirit. They that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So we now are these beings that are triune. So I believe the oneness that we have that makes us one, we are one in Christ. I believe we should be able to overcome differences, but to suggest that a man that was Greek today now gets born again and he's no longer Greek, that's not going to fly, because
he was making a metaphor.
Yeah. And so when you look in, if you look in Acts chapter 6, you see right after the dispensation of the Holy Spirit began, they were dealing with a race issue with the inception of the office of the deacon.
Exactly, which is and like you said, his Greekness is dismissed at that point, because Greeks had I think they had racist issues, even if it was Greeks against Athenians.
Well, no, this is people that were people of God practicing Judaism having an issue with people who were not, and they're saying, look, we don't want to deal with these folks, but because we are Christian, now this is no longer a position that you can take, but you have to deal with them. Once you become Christian, it does not change your race. No. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I understand that we are to be one in Christ, but I believe the beauty of it, the beauty of Christianity is the fact that we can be totally different, but the thing that we have that makes us one is Christ.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So, and I want to pause right there, because we've been on now for 2 hours and 30 minutes.
I can't. I'm about to say I have to leave, because you don't know this, Pastor Felix. I was in an accident in December. My car was totaled by a bus, and I've been sitting in the same position for 2.5 hours. Yeah. I can't feel my feet anymore.
We are about to end. I always enjoy when you guys come on.
Oh, it's a blast.
Pastor Felix, we're about to add you to a conversation
you need to be in the group.
Yes, we're gonna add you to a conversation that we have that prepare us for these.
Okay.
So,
Joe, great meeting.
I will warn you, I'm a lot in the group.
Yeah, so
I'm mean. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have earned a rite of passage.
I love it.
So thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you guys for listening and watching. I had gotten my show down to like an hour and 10 minutes, but when Go ahead, Pat.
One last thing. I know Joe was asking about this. These names are the exonerated 5.
Yes, you weren't here when I said I had a eye procedure and everything's blurry, so I couldn't read it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Sorry, and I can't read any of the comments too, so I apologize if any of those were good comments, and I would have addressed them if I could read them.
So okay, guys. So everybody have a good night, and we will definitely be in touch.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Have a great night.
Always a blast.
Indeed.